They say that a mother's love is supposed to be unconditional, an unbreakable bond that protects you from the cruelty of the world. But in my family, love was a highly exclusive, heavily taxed business transaction, and I was always the one left completely bankrupt. For as long as I can remember, my parents treated me less like a daughter and more like an unpaid administrative assistant. My only purpose on earth, according to them, was to facilitate and applaud my younger sister Vanessa's perfect, carefree existence. Vanessa was a 24-year-old aspiring social media influencer who had never worked a single hard day in her entire life. Yet, my parents happily paid the exorbitant rent for her luxury high-rise apartment downtown. They bought her designer clothes, funded her lavish vacations to tropical islands, and validated her endless stream of dramatic, childish tantrums. Growing up, the blatant favoritism was suffocating. It was woven into the very fabric of our daily lives. When Vanessa turned 16, my parents threw her a massive, fully catered party at an elite country club that cost tens of thousands of dollars. They hired a professional photographer, a DJ, and bought her a brand new sports car with a giant red bow on the hood. 2 years earlier, when I turned 16, my parents handed me a crisp $20 bill, told me happy birthday in passing, and suggested I pick up an evening shift at the local diner so I could start paying for my own high school supplies. If Vanessa wanted a new luxury handbag to show off to her fake wealthy friends, my parents would swipe their high-interest credit cards without a single second of hesitation. If I needed money for basic college textbooks, I was told to stop being such a selfish financial burden on the family. My name is Clara. Early on, I realized that if I wanted a good life, I had to build it entirely with my own 2 hands. I refused to let their toxicity destroy my future, so I built my life completely separate from their daily chaos. I took out student loans, worked double shifts to pay my own way through university, secured a demanding but rewarding remote job in digital marketing, and married a wonderful, incredibly hardworking man named David. David was everything my family was not. He was grounded, honest, and loved me fiercely. After years of emotional healing and financial struggles, we were finally blessed with beautiful, energetic twin boys, Leo and Sam. David worked long, grueling hours as a civil engineer, climbing the corporate ladder to provide a solid foundation for us. Because we could not afford expensive full-time childcare in the city, I managed absolutely everything myself. I was a full-time mother and a full-time employee, working frantically from my laptop at the kitchen table while the twins napped. I was independent, self-made, and profoundly content with the small, peaceful sanctuary David and I had built far away from my parents' toxic favoritism. The ultimate nightmare began during the final month of my second pregnancy. I was expecting our 3rd child, a baby girl. Because of previous complications and fluctuating blood pressure, it was classified as an extremely high-risk pregnancy. The specialists made it abundantly clear that I could go into sudden, premature labor at any given moment. They warned me that I would require an immediate emergency surgery to ensure the baby's survival. Any delay, even by a few minutes, could result in catastrophic, fatal complications for both me and my unborn daughter. On a dark, rainy Tuesday morning, David received an emergency phone call from his corporate headquarters. He had to fly out of state immediately for an urgent, non-negotiable structural bridge inspection. This project was critical for public safety, and completing it was the final requirement for his upcoming promotion to senior director. He tried to get out of it, pleading with his bosses, but there was no one else qualified to sign off on the engineering report. Before he walked out the front door, he set his luggage down, held my face in his hands, and looked into my eyes with deep, agonizing concern. "Clara, if absolutely anything feels wrong, call your parents immediately," David said, his voice laced with heavy anxiety. "They live only 10 minutes away. They sat right here in our living room last Sunday, drank our coffee, and gave me their absolute word that they would rush over to watch Leo and Sam if you had to go to the hospital." "I know, honey," I said, forcing a brave smile to calm his nerves. "They gave us their word. Everything will be fine. Just focus on your work, get the inspection done, and come home to us safely." But I should have known better. Promises from toxic, self-centered people are nothing more than empty air designed to keep up public appearances. They only say what makes them look like good people in the moment, with absolutely no intention of following through when things get difficult. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the house was relatively quiet. I was standing in the kitchen preparing a light lunch of sliced apples and sandwiches for the twins. Without a single second of warning, a sharp, blinding pain shot through my lower abdomen. It did not feel like a contraction. It felt like a jagged, heated knife, twisting violently in my stomach. I gasped, the air completely leaving my lungs, and dropped the ceramic plate I was holding. It shattered into dozens of sharp pieces on the cold kitchen tile. My knees buckled instantly, and I collapsed onto the floor, clutching my stomach as a massive wave of intense dizziness and nausea crashed over me. I looked down, and my heart practically stopped beating. I was hemorrhaging, and I was hemorrhaging severely. Pure, unfiltered panic instantly seized my chest. I knew my baby girl was in grave danger, and I could feel my own life rapidly slipping away as the room began to spin. Through tears of absolute agony and sheer, paralyzing terror, I dragged my heavy, weakened body across the kitchen floor, ignoring the shards of broken ceramic that scraped my knees. I reached up, blindly grabbed my cell phone from the counter, and dialed my mother's number. The phone rang 4 excruciating times. Each ring felt like an eternity. Finally, the line connected, but I did not hear the worried, comforting voice of a concerned mother. Instead, I heard the sound of loud, pounding bass music, the clinking of champagne glasses, and Vanessa screaming with wild, uninhibited excitement. They were clearly in a moving vehicle, celebrating at the top of their lungs. "Mom, please, you need to come over right now," I sobbed, my voice gasping desperately for oxygen as another wave of agonizing pain flared up in my stomach. "I am having a severe medical complication. I am bleeding. The ambulance is on its way to take me to the hospital for an emergency surgery. David is completely out of state, and his phone is off on a construction site. I need you to come watch Leo and Sam right now. They are in the living room, they are terrified, and they are crying." There was a long, cold, incredibly irritated pause on the other end of the line. The music was slightly muffled, as if my mother had covered the receiver with her hand. When she finally spoke, she let out a loud, dramatic sigh that communicated she considered my life or death emergency, nothing more than an annoying inconvenience to her busy schedule. "Clara, are you serious right now?" my mother snapped, her voice dripping with pure, unadulterated resentment. Today of all days, Vanessa finally managed to get front-row VIP tickets to the Mega Drake concert tonight downtown. We are already in the luxury limousine on our way to the stadium VIP pre-party. The highway traffic is absolutely terrible, and if we tell the driver to turn around now, we will lose our premium entry slot and our table service. Can you not just hold it in or call someone else? "Mom, I am bleeding to death on my kitchen floor," I screamed, a wave of cold sweat breaking out across my entire body as my vision began to blur into a terrifying darkness. "This is not a drill. My baby girl might die if I do not get to the operating room in 20 minutes. Please, I am begging you as your daughter, turn the limousine around. Vanessa can go to a concert any day of the week." Suddenly, I heard a scuffle and the phone was violently snatched away from my mother's hand. Vanessa's sharp, entitled, incredibly venomous voice pierced my ear like a rusty needle. "Listen to me, Clara," Vanessa shrieked over the loud hip-hop music. "Stop being so incredibly selfish and dramatic. You always try to steal the spotlight and ruin my life every single time something good happens to me. This VIP package cost $3,000, and I have been planning this designer outfit for 6 months. Mom is not turning this expensive car around to babysit your annoying toddlers just because you have a minor stomachache and want attention. Call a neighbor, call a taxi, or figure it out yourself. Stop ruining my night." Before I could even utter another pleading word, before I could tell them that I loved them and was terrified I was going to die, the line went completely dead. They had hung up on me. They had actually pressed the red button and hung up the phone. They left me to die on a kitchen floor so they could drink cheap champagne and listen to music in a rented limousine. I lay there in the cold silence of my home, tears streaming down my face, listening to the terrified cries of my 3-year-old twins. Leo and Sam had crawled into the kitchen and were clinging to my arms, their little hands getting covered in my blood. They were completely unaware that their own grandmother and aunt had just traded their mother's survival for a concert ticket. I pulled them close, kissing their foreheads, praying that someone would find them if I lost consciousness. Thankfully, the emergency dispatcher had tracked my location. The paramedics arrived within 7 minutes, their heavy boots pounding against my front porch. Seeing my desperate situation and the 2 crying toddlers sitting in a pool of blood, a kind elderly neighbor named Mrs. Gable rushed over from next door. She practically kicked the door open, took one look at the scene, and immediately swooped in. With tears in her own eyes, she volunteered to take the twins to her house, distract them with cartoons, and keep them safe so the medical team could rush me onto the stretcher. The next few hours were a chaotic, terrifying blur of blinding hospital lights, frantic doctors shouting urgent medical orders, oxygen masks being slammed onto my face, and the terrifying metallic sound of surgical equipment being prepared. I was sliced open, pumped with multiple heavy blood transfusions, and went through a brutal, agonizing emergency procedure. The doctors fought desperately to stop the internal bleeding and safely extract the baby. I lost consciousness twice on the operating table, but by the time I finally opened my eyes hours later in the sterile, quiet recovery room, the nightmare was over. A tiny, beautiful miracle was crying softly in the clear plastic bassinet beside my hospital bed. My daughter had survived, but as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I realized I was completely broken, both physically from the massive surgery and emotionally from the ultimate betrayal of my own blood. David arrived at the hospital just past midnight. His face was pale, his clothes were wrinkled, and he looked like he had aged 10 years in a single day. He had abandoned his inspection the moment he got the voicemail, caught the first emergency flight back, and sprinted through the hospital corridors. He fell to his knees beside my bed, buried his face in my neck, and wept openly, his jaw clenched into an expression of pure, unadulterated fury. When I managed to whisper exactly what my mother and sister had done on the phone. The next morning, the heavy wooden door to my hospital room swung open without a single knock. My mother and Vanessa walked in. They were holding premium designer coffee cups, wearing flashy, expensive outfits from the night before, and laughing loudly about an inside joke from the concert. They looked completely refreshed, completely unbothered, and completely remorseless. "Well, look who made a massive mountain out of a molehill," Vanessa smirked, taking a sip of her iced latte. She walked over to the bassinet to glance at the sleeping baby for exactly 2 seconds before instantly turning away to check her makeup reflection in the room's dark window. "See? The baby is perfectly fine. You are perfectly fine. You completely panicked over nothing on the phone and tried to ruin my entire VIP experience for a standard birth. I cannot believe you tried to guilt-trip Mom like that." My mother crossed her arms, looking down at my pale, stitched-up, exhausted body with total indifference. "Honestly, Clara, the phone call yesterday was completely unacceptable behavior. A good older sister supports her family's happiness instead of throwing dramatic tantrums to get attention. You need to apologize to Vanessa right now for causing her so much unnecessary anxiety before her big event." I looked at my mother, and then I looked at my sister. The crushing, heavy sadness inside my chest instantly froze into a solid, unyielding sheet of ice. The fragile, desperate daughter who'd spent her entire life begging for their love, working for their approval, and crying over their neglect died on that kitchen floor yesterday. Standing before them now, in spirit, was a mother who would protect her own children at any cost. "Get out," I whispered, my voice calm, flat, and dangerously steady. "Excuse me? What did you just say to me?" My mother snapped, her eyes narrowing in shock as if I had just slapped her. I said, "Get the hell out of my hospital room," I said, pushing myself up slightly, staring her dead in the eye. The raw, terrifying authority in my voice made Vanessa take a physical step backward. "You abandoned me and my children during a critical medical emergency for a pop concert. You left me to bleed out. You are no longer my mother, and you are no longer a grandmother to my kids. But before you leave, I want you to look at my face and remember this exact day, because very soon, your perfect little world is going to fracture, and when you come begging to my door for a lifeline, I am going to make sure the gates slam shut right in your faces." Vanessa laughed, tossing her hair back with an arrogant sneer that made my blood run cold. "Oh, please, Clara. Are you actually threatening us? With what? You work from a laptop in your living room while your husband fixes old bridges for a living. We do not need anything from you, and we never will. Come on, Mom. Let us leave her to her little pity party. This hospital smells like cheap bleach anyway." My mother rolled her eyes, grabbed her premium coffee cup, and walked out the door with Vanessa. She slammed it shut behind them without looking back at her newborn granddaughter. The moment the door clicked into place, the room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. David, who had been standing quietly in the corner of the room, stepped forward. He reached out and gently squeezed my trembling hand. His eyes were burning with an intense, quiet fury that terrified even me. "Clara, I am so sorry," David whispered, his voice shaking with anger. "I should have never left you alone trusting them. I will handle this. I will cut them off completely from our lives today. They do not deserve to know our children." "No, David," I whispered, a cold, calculating calm washing over my entire body as I looked down at my new little daughter. "Do not cut them off just yet. Let them think they won. Let them think their perfect, entitled little world is completely safe, because the storm is already brewing, and they have absolutely no idea who actually holds the umbrella." What my mother and sister did not know was a deep corporate secret that my father had been desperately trying to hide from the entire family for the past 6 months. My father ran a medium-sized logistics and shipping firm called Vanguard Shipping. The company had been bleeding money rapidly due to his terrible management, rising fuel costs, and massive overhead expenses. To keep the company afloat and continue funding Vanessa's ultra-luxurious lifestyle, her high-rise rent, and my mother's country club memberships, my father had secretly taken out a massive $200,000 business credit line. To secure the loan, he had used their beautiful suburban family home as the primary collateral, and the primary civil engineering consultant firm that checked the structural and safety integrity of the government shipping routes and industrial bridges his heavy trucks relied on every single day. That was the exact firm where my husband David had just been officially promoted to Senior Director of Infrastructure Operations. 3 agonizing weeks passed. I returned home from the hospital, my surgical stitches slowly healing, but my mind was entirely focused on the chessboard. I spent my days taking care of Leo, Sam, and our beautiful newborn daughter, Lily, while David went back to work and kept a very close eye on the regional transport data. One evening, while I was feeding the baby in the living room, the front iron gates of our property rattled loudly. I looked out the window and saw my father's luxury sedan parked crookedly in the driveway, completely blocking the walkway. He did not walk up the steps with his usual arrogant, dominant stride. He practically stumbled into our house. His face was ghostly pale, his expensive suit was drenched in sweat, and a look of pure, unadulterated terror lived in his eyes. My mother and Vanessa rushed in right behind him. Both of them were crying hysterically, their fake high society composure completely shattered into millions of pieces. Clara, please, you have to talk to David," my mother screamed. She threw her expensive designer purse onto our entryway floor and ran toward me with pleading hands. "Your father's business credit line has been completely frozen by the State Transport Board. They are threatening to revoke his commercial shipping licenses by tomorrow morning due to a severe safety violation on the northern route bridges. If they pull those licenses, the bank will recall his entire debt, and we will lose the house, the cars, everything." Vanessa stepped forward. Her influencer confidence completely vanished. Her face was blotchy from tears and ruined makeup. "Clara, please, my brand partnerships are tied to my wealthy lifestyle. If we lose the house and go bankrupt, my career is completely over. The inspector who filed the critical violation report is David's direct junior assistant. Just tell David to sign the structural waiver and make the report go away. We are family." I slowly placed my daughter safely into her crib, smoothed down my dress, and turned around to look at the 3 people who had left me bleeding on a kitchen floor while my toddlers wept in terror. Family? I asked, my voice dropping into a freezing, dangerous whisper that made all three of them instantly freeze in their tracks. That is a very interesting word coming from you, Vanessa. When I was begging you on the phone 3 weeks ago, clutching my stomach while hemorrhaging to death, did you think about family? When you told me to stop stealing your spotlight because you had a $3,000 VIP ticket to a concert, did you care about my life? My mother dropped to her knees right there on my living room rug, sobbing hysterically. Clara, I am your mother. I made a terrible mistake. I was caught up in the excitement of the night. I did not know it was actually that serious. Please, have some mercy on your father. He has high blood pressure. He cannot handle a federal audit and bankruptcy. You knew exactly how serious it was, Mom, I said, stepping closer, looking down at her with absolute, unwavering indifference. The doctors told you I needed an immediate emergency surgery to save my child's life. You chose the concert. You chose Vanessa's vanity over my survival. And now, the universe is choosing accountability over your comfort. David walked through the front door from his home office at that exact moment. He was holding a thick black legal folder stamped with the state engineering crest. He stood tall in the doorway, looking at my family with cold, unyielding disgust. David, please, my father begged, reaching out with trembling hands, his voice cracking under the crushing weight of his collapsing empire. Just sign the structural variance waiver for my logistics route. It is just a minor paperwork adjustment. It costs you nothing, but it saves everything I have built. It costs me my professional integrity, Robert, David said. His voice was deep, firm, and completely immovable as he walked over to stand right beside me. And more importantly, it costs me the respect I have for my wife. Your trucks have been intentionally overloading those structural bridges for months. You have been violating state law just to maximize your profits and pay for Vanessa's luxury vacations. You endangered public lives just like your family endangered my wife. The report stands as written. The freeze on your commercial licenses is permanent. As of 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, your firm is officially classified as a public safety hazard. Vanessa let out a sharp, hysterical shriek. She fell to the floor, running her hands through her hair in pure panic. No, you cannot do this to me. I have a massive photo shoot next week. I am supposed to be launching my luxury clothing line. You can launch your clothing line from the bargain bins of a discount retail store, Vanessa, I said, a cold, ruthless smile finally cutting across my face. Because by the end of this month, my father's assets will be fully liquidated by the bankruptcy court. Get out of my house, and do not worry about blocking my number anymore, because I have already erased your existence from my life. My father looked at me, his eyes wide with absolute, paralyzed defeat. He finally realized that no amount of begging, no amount of tears, and no amount of manipulation would ever undo the massive damage they had done to themselves. He slowly turned around, his head bowed, and walked out the door like a completely broken man. My mother had to physically drag a screaming, hysterical Vanessa by the arm behind him. Their high society illusion was completely obliterated. As the front door closed behind them, David wrapped his arms securely around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. As we both looked out at the quiet night, the heavy, suffocating weight of my childhood was finally lifted. 6 months passed with brutal, beautiful efficiency. Without the commercial shipping licenses, my father's logistics firm completely collapsed within 30 days. The bank moved forward with an immediate, high-priority liquidation of all their personal assets to cover the massive, outstanding business debt. I actually drove past my childhood home the day the bank foreclosed on it. I parked my car quietly across the street, rolling the window down just enough to hear the commotion. I watched 2 massive yellow moving trucks empty out the beautiful mansion. Bailiffs were carrying out the expensive leather sofas, the crystal chandeliers, and the giant flat-screen televisions. My mother was weeping on the front lawn, clutching a cardboard box of cheap plastic picture frames. Vanessa was hiding behind a moving truck, desperately trying to shield her face from the wealthy neighbors who had gathered on the sidewalk, whispering and taking pictures of their downfall with their cell phones. They lost the sprawling suburban home, the luxury vehicles, and every single ounce of their fake wealth. They were forced to move into a tiny, cramped, two-bedroom apartment on the far outskirts of the city, right next to a loud, polluted highway. My father, stripped of his CEO title, had to take a low-paying job as a daytime clerk at a local auto parts store. My mother, who used to spend her afternoons sipping wine at the country club, now worked the register at a local discount grocery store just to afford their monthly utility bills. Vanessa's entire influencer career evaporated overnight. When her luxury brand partnerships discovered the massive family bankruptcy, the public transportation scandal, and the loss of her high-rise apartment, they dropped her instantly. Social media is a ruthless place, and nobody wants to follow a broke influencer living in a cramped apartment. Left completely single, broke, and without a single dollar to fund her vanity, the girl who once spent $3,000 on a VIP concert ticket while her sister bled was now working 40 hours a week behind the counter of a local fast food restaurant, wearing a greasy uniform and a name tag. As for me, David and I watched our family thrive in a beautiful, sunlit house filled with true laughter, warmth, and unconditional love. Leos and Sam were growing into happy, healthy, intelligent boys, and our little miracle daughter, Lily, was hitting every single developmental milestone perfectly. Yesterday morning, a heavy handwritten letter arrived in my mailbox. It had no return address, but I recognized the frantic handwriting instantly. It was from my mother. I sat at my kitchen island, sipping a warm cup of herbal tea, and read the messy, ink-stained pages. The letter was filled with desperate, manipulative pleas. She wrote about how sick my father was, how deeply depressed Vanessa had become, and how they were struggling to pay for their basic groceries every week. She did not apologize for leaving me bleeding on the kitchen floor. She did not apologize for abandoning my children when they were terrified. Instead, she asked if I could use my savings to pay off their apartment lease or hire Vanessa as my remote assistant because family takes care of family. I looked at the letter, feeling absolutely nothing. The fragile, desperate girl who used to cry herself to sleep begging for their affection was officially gone forever, replaced by a woman of iron. I slowly walked over to the kitchen fireplace, tossed the letter directly into the open flames, and watched it curl, blacken, and turn to ash within seconds. My family thought they could treat my life like a disposable footnote for their own amusement. They thought they could leave my children terrified and walk away into a glamorous sunset without consequence. But in the end, the universe always balances the scales. I had survived the trauma. I had built an untouchable sanctuary for the people who truly mattered, and my toxic family was finally forced to live in the cold, miserable world they had created. The nightmare was permanently over. My name is Clara, and I am finally beautifully free.